Well, I'm really delighted this morning to welcome Dave Kingswood here with me from Home for Good. And Dave, it's really, you're part of an organisation that is very engaged with providing a home. Tell me more about what that means in the context you work in.
Yeah, so Home for Good came about because there was this recognition of the fact that there were thousands of children in the UK who didn't have loving homes. And so we wanted to challenge the church particularly to say, what does it look like for the church to come around children who need to be fostered, to be adopted, and to have supported lodgings for those who are older teenagers. So what we do is we very intentionally kind of push into some of those areas. We're challenging the church to foster, to adopt, to provide supported lodgings. We push into local government and into central government and say, hey, you need to be investing in some of these areas and informing them. We try and influence and speak to church leaders about all the places that they should be going into, and a bunch of other things that we do. But primarily we focus on the UK, and I work as a local project worker in Bath and North East Somerset, where I work with the local authority, and I work with them to find loving homes for the kids who need them in this area.
That's amazing. I know you've been doing that for some years now,
Yes.
and you yourself have been engaged in sharing your family home with Lisa.
We were her fourth foster placement by the time she was 11.
Wow.
And she'd been through profound loss, and so she lived with us for 3.5 years. And at the end of that 3.5 years, she unfortunately, some of her behaviours were just becoming increasingly unsafe, and she couldn't stay around. It was really, really tricky because she had to leave, and my kids felt like they'd lost a sister, and we felt like we'd lost one of our kids, and my church felt like they'd lost one of their youth, and where's God in that? Like, I thought this was a thing we were doing, Anyway, I was stood in church about a year later, 9 months, 10 months later. And I felt these two little arms come around me, and there she was. And I was chatting to a friend, and I said, Lisa, what's been going on? And she kind of told me that she'd had this really tricky year, and how hard it was to hear all those words about us loving her, and because she really didn't believe that she was worth loving, and all this stuff. And then she said, I've been placed in another placement, and I said that I wanted to go to church, and essentially these new foster carers said, okay, we'll take you, and they drove her over to our church. She was about half an hour away.
Cool.
And she didn't really miss a Sunday after that for about a year, and she kind of connected back in with her old youth workers and all the people that loved her and had journeyed with her and stuff. And then, without me knowing, she'd actually gone to her old youth worker and said, I want to get baptised. I think this... Oh, excuse me. Sorry.
No, listen. That's incredible.
So this still gets me, it's good. And she said, I remember, this all happened without really me knowing about it, and that was great. And she stood up on this day, I remember, and she basically said, I believe in this God that loves me, and it's also because of you lot. She led, it's quite a big church, there's, 150 of us, something like that, 200 of us. And, she kind of said, it's because you didn't judge me for my behaviour. It's because you fed me. It's because you took me out. It's because you invested in me. It's because you said that I was worth loving. And I know I kicked against it and, all that stuff, but I accept it now. And after that, for a little while, she came on tour with me around churches. As I went and spoke about Home for Good in churches, I'd stand up and I'd say, all the reasons we should come around vulnerable kids and foster and adopt and support, we should do supported lodgings, and, we should do all of this stuff. And then it almost doesn't matter what I say, because when she then stands up and says, we need you. Us kids who have been through the ringer, who have had these really hard early starts in life.
It speaks for itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, we need you to do this. You Christians, you need to get serious about this. And so for me, it's just such a beautiful image of, when God says, look after the widow and the orphan in James, what are we intentionally doing about this? Like, where is the church really, manifesting and working around this stuff? So, it's such a clear call for me in our generation of, if we've got an anticipated 36,000 children coming into care in 2023. So there's 100 children a day coming into care. So what's the church doing about that? Where are these stories? And I'm seeing more and more people take this seriously. So that excites me, just in Bath and North East Somerset, where I'm the project worker, but also what's happening nationally, where we're seeing the church step up and say, hey, this is a serious part of my worship as a believer.
Yeah.
Stepping into the gap and coming alongside a young person, a teenager, a child who needs this loving home, and more importantly, not more importantly, but alongside that loving environment and culture of what the church can bring. It's not just the people who decide to do supported lodgings or foster or adopt. It's not just that family. It's also what the church at a larger level can bring. What that youth worker can bring, what the old lady who makes the tea, the person who brings the lasagna around on the first night of respite, the person who says, oh, do you know what? You're clearly having a hard time. Why don't I become an overnight carer for you? If you've got it in your heart to recognise that you could be one of those people who says, I think God's been pulling at my heart about fostering or adoption or supported lodgings, for teenagers. Don't let anything get in the way of that. Step up, make the call, journey with us with Home for Good. We'd love to support you and love you through that process and connect you in with other people who do it. The world needs more good mums and dads. It really does. And, for all the numbers that I just said there, we need more of those people. But if you know that isn't for you directly, who can you be to one of those families who does choose to do that, or to one of those carers that does choose to do that? Maybe you could do something really practical. Maybe you could pray. Maybe you could support Home for Good financially. Maybe whatever. There's 100 different ways that you could bring those things. But certainly that old adage of a village brings up a child. Well, a church brings up a child as well. I know that was the experience for myself, and just as I've shared about Lisa, that would be her experience as well. It wasn't just us, the Kingswoods. It was our whole church community, and
it's that extended family, isn't it?
It's an extended family,
and the welcome that's there.
Absolutely.
And yet, so often the church has failed to do that, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think more often than not, we've always got good intentions, but we're not very well equipped quite often. We do need a bit of education around some of that stuff. It's tricky to understand a child who's come from very traumatic early backgrounds and has been through profound loss, and often children who need the most love will ask for it in the most unloving ways, and that's quite hard for us to understand if you come from quite.
So your role within Home for Good is to try and help people to make that journey of understanding, presumably.
Absolutely. So I help church leaders to try and understand that. I work with youth and children's workers to say what does an environment look like where you can incorporate children who come from a diversity of backgrounds. What does that look like? For you to do that well. For me to support foster carers, adopters, people who do supported lodgings, to be able to ask good questions, to connect them in with a larger network of people, so that they can kind of say, oh, I've been struggling with that too, or here's where I found solutions, or whatever it is. We get to not only help people, but realise that this isn't a lonely thing that you've chosen to do. That actually there's a widening movement of beauty, really, in this thing of what it means to come alongside kids who so desperately.
So when you get to the end of a day, when do you know it's been a successful day? What makes you think I've made a difference?
Yeah, I think when I've helped a church leader realise, oh wait, my language really matters. The way I'm talking about family really matters. Or whether it's chatting to a foster carer who's part of they're going through the assessment process, and they're like, I've got so many questions. Where does my faith fit in this? Like when I'm talking to social workers, what does it look like, Dave? And I can say, oh, I've got a bit of an idea about that, and I know somebody else who's quite good at this stuff. So if I've helped someone navigate that, just help them feel at ease and know that the journey they're on is good and that they're well supported. Oh, that is great. Or if I've helped a family connect in with somebody else who maybe they're also struggling with something similarly behaviourally, maybe with their children. They say, oh, this person's got through that. How did they do it? And so I've been able to kind of connect them in that way. That's just 3 examples, but I could talk all day. But anything really where I can support and champion and kind of shout from the back and say, oh, keep going. What you're doing is so great.
Well, you're a great encourager, David. Can I just say thank you for all you're doing? It's just amazing, and I hope that people feel the infection of what you're saying as you've shared with us this morning. Thank you so much.